this is the intermediate Google Drive PD for Google Forms and Google Sheets. I'm assuming that if you're in this PD, you have a little bit of familiarity with Google Drive. You've probably been using Google Docs quite a bit. You may have used Google Slides. You may have already even tried some of these tools with Forms and Sheets. This will give you some new tools if that's the case, if you are familiar a little bit. But if you're brand new, also the right place for you. Okay, great. So let's keep moving forward then. So quick little information, Google Forms, purple icon on when you're in Google Drive, online tool for collecting student data. Some people use it for attendance. The example we're gonna go through in the first half hour of this PD is using it as a quiz. I know everyone here just filled out a Google form, but with it being the Google Form PD, we're gonna get started like this. I'm gonna ask everyone here to take a quiz. So this is a quiz that I built ahead of time. So what I'm gonna ask everyone to do is you're gonna take this quiz just to kind of see what that experience is like using a Google form as a quiz. And then we are going to all together look at the data right after everyone has filled it out. And then after that, you will all be actually making your own quiz. I'll have like a 5 to 10 minute period where you'll make your own quiz. So again, step 1, take this quiz. I just put it in the chat. I'm gonna put it in the chat again. It should take you 2 minutes to complete. Once you complete it, we're all gonna look at the data all together. So your task right now, before 3:10, fill out that quiz. And I do wanna take a note while you're doing it. It will ask for your name and different questions like how many students you teach. Feel free to put fake stuff. If you wanna put that your name's Batman, go for it. So that you all can see what a quiz looks like. So again, 2 more minutes, go ahead and take the quiz at this URL. Let's see if we have some coming in. Yep, see some responses coming in. So for folks that are done, and if you want to look at my screen, I'm actually in real time seeing some people's answers come in. See, just in the last minute, it's gone from 24 responses to 32 responses. So I'm going to give everyone another minute, complete the quiz that was put in the chat. And once you do, you can go ahead and look at my screen again, where I am looking at all the responses. And the responses are still coming in. That's great, everybody. I'm just gonna scroll through this slowly. If anyone's looking at my screen, I'll explain it in a bit.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hello.
Yes, I have another teacher from the school who would like to join in. How can she join in?
If you want to just, if you're looking at the screen that has my screen in front of it, you can just grab the URL, and I'm actually just going, I'm going to put the URL in the chat. Just send them that URL right there.
It says mouse teacher?
Yes, but do you see the chat? It says meet.google.com. Just give them that URL.
Okay, I'm not seeing it, sorry.
I'm going to put it in again. It's in the chat.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, David. Okay, everybody.
Okay, Phyllis?
Thank you. I'm
Hold him.
that person now.
Okay, I have to press now.
Great. Okay, everybody, thanks so much for filling out that quiz. And what we're going to do in this portion is we're going to look at the data that everyone here filled out. And to do that, what I've done here is I have my form is just saved in my Google Drive. And I'll show you how I made it and all that stuff in a little bit. But again, we're kind of backtracking here. But I made this form ahead of time and turned it into a quiz. And I have some questions here. What is your name? Who is the first president? Different things. But after I created it, there's 2 different tabs in Google Forms. And this is really useful because questions is where I'm creating the quiz. And responses is where I can actually look at all the answers. So what I've done here is I've attached a point value to this quiz. And I'm seeing a lot of people getting the first question right, which is great. So let's see, we've got first name. Who was the first president? 37 people got that right. 1 person thought it was Thomas Jefferson, and no one thought it was Alexander Hamilton. Favorite foods? I've just said, Google Forms has automatically generated all these charts, all this data for me based on your responses. So you create a quiz, your students take it, you get these charts without you having to do anything. So I actually made the correct answer to the what is your favorite food question, pizza bagels. But seems like a lot of people, 54% of people actually like pizza more. And you can actually see some things that Google creates, the Google Forms platform creates really nice and easy. For instance, is who was the first president, really easy bar graph to read. But not everything it automatically generates makes a whole lot of sense. So how many students do you teach? This is a really tough bar graph to look at. So I'm going to show you now, this useful data is a good overview of how your class is doing, but also just at the top of this sheet. So again, this is a quiz I made. It lives in my Google Drive. And I can see where it lives in the Google Drive by clicking that folder there. There's the questions I created over here in responses. That's where I'm looking at the overall data. But this little button in the top right-hand corner, if you can't see it, it is a green-looking grid. And I'm going to click on that. And the reason I'm clicking on that now is because this is a Google Sheet that has been automatically generated from your answers on my Google form. And this is how I can look at everyone's answers one at a time. So again, this was really great for an overview of how the class did. But this sheet that was generated, and I did it by, I looked at it by clicking this little button here, is a really great way just to see one person at a time and what they answered. So if I look at the first person to take this quiz, Test McTest is their name. They got the first question right. They like pizza the most. And I can even see some of the answers to some of their long questions. So they're brand new to Forms and Sheets. Whereas the next person is a pro at Forms and Sheets. So looking at the responses, and again, I did not create this Google Sheet. It was automatically generated from the form that you all took. So that's how we, after a quiz has been made, how we kind of manage it. Now what I want to do is I want to show you how to create a quiz. So I'm here in my Google Drive. If you don't know how to get here, it's drive.google.com. Again, I'm going to ask you just to watch my screen for the next 3 to 4 minutes. And then I'm going to give everyone about 5 minutes to create their own quiz. So just watch what I'm doing. I'm in Google Drive. I'm going to create a new, and I need a new form, but the only way to find that is if I scroll down a little bit to this More section. I'm going to click Google Forms. Brand new Google form. I'm going to call this, what's today? May 1 quiz. And the first thing I'm going to do, and this, I can't stress this enough. If you walk away with one thing today, walk away with this. The first question you should have on every one of your quizzes or forms that you hand out to your students is this. What is your name? If you do not have this question, you're going to have a difficult time figuring out who is submitting what. So again, first thing you do, you create a quiz, create a form, you ask this question first. What is your name? Maybe you do first name, last name. And actually even Google Forms did something really cool here. This was a multiple choice question, but now it just automatically changed it to short answer. And what I mean by that, so it could be multiple choice and I can add some options here for students. But since it's asking for their name, what I would like is just a short answer. So this gives them just like a little box to type into. And then I'm going to make this question required. So I really want to highlight this over here where my mouse is. This required toggle is students are not going to be allowed to submit this quiz without answering this specific question. Some questions students can skip over and that's fine, but this is not one I want them to skip. So I hit that required toggle. The last thing I'm going to show you before I let you go off and create your own quiz is a really cool little option here. So right now this is just a form, but in Google Forms, I'm going to go up here to settings. And this looks like a little gear in the corner. There's 3 tabs here: general, presentation, and quizzes. So to get to this again, what I did, I'm in making my form. I go to the settings menu. In general, there's one thing I want to make sure is accurate. This box right here, if this was checked, you all would have a very hard time taking my quiz because you are not in my mouse.org, what's called a domain. So I always just make sure that this box is not checked so that anyone can take this quiz in the world. So again, that was in general. I'm not restricting who can take it. And then the next tab I want to look at is quizzes. And I'm going to click this toggle to make this form a quiz. So I'm going to save that. And now that I've done that, I have options here. So I'm going to create another question by clicking this button here. Multiple choice question. I'm going to say favorite ice cream. And we'll do chocolate. And I'm going to add an option for vanilla. And because this is a quiz, and because I went to the settings menu, went to quizzes, and turned that toggle on, I can now provide an answer key. And I can say that obviously chocolate is the right answer to that question, and it's worth 100 points. And now when students actually take this, they can actually figure out right away if they got the question right or wrong. Okay, that was a lot of me talking for 10 minutes. So what I'm going to ask everyone to do right now, while I answer that question in just a moment, what I'm going to ask everyone to do right now is you are going to go into Google Forms. So in another window, you're going to access Google Forms in one of 2 ways. You can go to drive.google.com, hit new, and create a Google form, or you can just go directly to Google Forms by doing forms.google.com. And I'm going to give everyone now 5 minutes. You're going to create a quiz using Google Forms, and just add a couple questions. Ask for their name and maybe some silly question. Whether or not you use it with their students is not the goal right now. The goal right now is for you to create a Google form and turn it into a quiz. It's 3:18. We're going to take this to 3:23. If you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. And again, you're taking this time right now to go to Google Forms, create a form, turn it into a quiz, and add a couple questions to it. And that is the URL for Forms. some questions coming in the chat. That's great. If you do have another question, feel free to put it in chat, or if you'd like to unmute yourself for a moment and ask that question, feel free to go for it. Again, if you have any questions while creating your form and turning it into a quiz, feel free to ask. Just another 2 minutes while you're doing that. I see a question in the chat. I'm going to actually answer with everyone. So the required icon, and if you're looking at my screen, you actually see it. When you add this required icon, you toggle the switch. It makes it so that the students have to answer that question. So if you try to submit the quiz without answering that question, that student would get an error. So it's really up to you, depending on the question, whether or not you want that required icon toggled on or off. You got it. Thank you. I'm going to give everyone just another 60 seconds. Actually, it seems like some folks are still getting through their project, or not project, but creating their first form or quiz. So I just want to give everyone a moment to actually be able to experience this for a little bit longer.
After finish completing the quiz, where do I send it?
I'm not asking you to send that particular quiz anywhere, but actually in a moment, I'm going to show everyone how you would send this to your students.
Oh, okay, great.
That's a great question, though. Thank you. Just 30 seconds, everyone, before I ask you to look at my screen again. Okay, everybody. I know some folks might be right in the middle of creating their quiz, but I'm going to ask you right now if you could please just go back to the tab where you're looking at my screen. You'll see a big thing that says Mouse PD Sample Quiz. I'm scrolling up and down at the moment. Please go ahead and look at my screen because I'm going to go back into teaching you some new things. I'm happy everyone had a moment to experiment with making quizzes. And I'm going to show you just a few things here. So after you've created your quiz, the next really important thing is how do you get folks to look at this quiz and take this quiz? So the way you would do that, and again, I'm hoping everyone's looking at my screen, purple button at the top right-hand corner says send. And I'm going to click on it. There's a few different ways to do it. I can send it directly to someone's email. But I think one of the most effective ways, especially if you might be using Google Classrooms already, I'm going to use this little link button here. It kind of looks like a chain. And this gives me just a URL, and I'm going to copy it. So I'm going to right-click, copy, and I'll show you if I paste it into my URL bar. This is what anyone I send that URL to and they click on it would see, which is great. It's exactly what I want them to see. Google even has an option here to shorten links. So I'm going to click this button, and it's just a little bit shorter, so something a little bit easier to work with. So that's really nice. And then what I'd like to address, some folks actually put their form in the chat for this PD. Thank you so much for doing that, but because it became a learning experience. So, sorry, I don't mean to call anyone out, but Julie, you actually, when I tried to open your form, I got this this error message here. Not error message, but I got this notification here saying that I need permission to look at it. Now, I want to just address, I covered this a little bit before, but it is so important, and it could be something that accidentally happens very easily. Julie, yeah, in the chat. So it's because I'm not in your G Suite, and it's just because your settings are a bit off. So if I show, I'm going to put this back over to the side, and I just want to show everybody something. So again, why don't you go ahead? I'm going to show this again. I'm going to give everyone a second just to do it on their screen as well. Again, top right-hand corner, there's a little gear button. That's our settings menu. I'm going to click on settings. And in the general menu, you must make sure that this box is not checked. So right now I have it checked. So if you guys try to go to this form, you wouldn't see it. But now that I have it unchecked, anyone can see it. As long as I send that link out, other people will be able to take it. So let's try it again. Yep. So Julie, thanks so much for sending it. Yep, so now that you have unchecked that box, here is that quiz that someone in this call made just a moment ago. And let's see, someone else posted theirs in there too. I'm just gonna click on David's. Yep, thanks so much. And David even got a little photo in there. That's fantastic. So a lot of different cool tools in there. If you wanna dig in a little bit more into creating your own forms and doing things like adding photos, and you can see mine has a nice little red theme, and I put my logo in here. There's a lot of great resources that Google has, and if we have time for questions at the end, we're definitely going to cover that. But we're about halfway through this PD, and I want to move on to the next portion, which is Sheets. So please be sure you're looking at my screen. I'm just going to go through these slides. Oops, sorry. So next portion, we just finished up on Google Forms. We talked about how to turn them into quizzes, and we even took a look at the sheet that gets automatically generated after someone takes a form. Okay, so now we're going to change mindsets a little bit and go to Google Sheets. So what is Google Sheets? It's a web-based Word spreadsheet. So if you're familiar with Microsoft Excel, it's going to be extremely similar to that. The difference is that it's going to run in your browser. So it's going to run in Google Chrome or whatever browser, Safari, whatever you might be using. You won't need to download any software. It just runs in the browser. And what's really nice about that is it allows you to pick it up on any computer that you might be on. There's also a really good app if you're using an iPhone or an Android that you can pick up Google Sheets with. And it allows you for collaboration with some other people. So we'll take a look at that in just a moment. So the way you would access Google Sheets, two different ways, similar to what we did with Forms. You can go to drive.google.com and then just click New and find it in Google Sheets in there. Or there's always, you can go to sheets.google.com. Don't go there right now. Please continue to look at my screen. I'm going to, again, cover a concept for about 5 to 10 minutes. And then I'm going to give you some time to create your own sheet with a large amount of data in it. So again, we're just looking at my screen. Being able to share documents in or share sheets in Google Sheets is really useful. If you've ever shared a document in Google Docs or slides in Google Slides, it's very, very similar to that. You have an option to, after you click the share button, to decide who's going to see this, this sheet. Just by sending them the URL, you can give them an option just to see it, or you can give an option to even just to be able to edit it, so the two of you can edit it at the same time. And we're going to look at that in a moment while I go through a sheet with a whole bunch of data in it. Great. Next thing we're going to do is I'm going to take a Google Sheet with a whole bunch of data on it, just a lot of information in the cells of the spreadsheet. And we're going to make use of it. We're going to make some tables, going to make some different ways to take a large subset of data and make use of it. So in this example, I really want to stress this. It's in red here below. I'm going to use probably one of my favorite platforms on the internet. It's called NYC Open Data. You don't have to use this with your students. If you're working with elementary school students, I wouldn't recommend it. It is a bit confusing, but I would recommend this platform just as a really cool tool that you could use with high school students. You can use it with middle school students, and if you want to try to parse out some of the information, it is a cool tool to get kids working on Google Sheets. But again, don't feel like you need to learn NYC Open Data. This is just a cool place where I'm going to get a lot of information from. So if you're not familiar, NYC Open Data is a website put out by the city, and basically any information that is collected by a public worker is uploaded here for people to look at. Things like parking tickets, 311 calls, hot water complaints. But today, what I'm going to do for this PD is one of my favorite things to look up is dogs. So this is just a website put out by New York with a whole bunch of data on it. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a spreadsheet that we can do something cool with all that data. So what I've done here, it's all this information that New York City puts out on dog bites or dog runs, dog parks in the city. I'm just looking at the New York City dog licensing data set. So I'm just gonna click on that. And what we see here is my ability to export and view some data. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna export this data as what's called a CSV file. This is a file that is specifically really nice for Google Sheets to be able to read. I've went to NYC Open Data. I'm looking at dog licensing. I export it as a CSV. It's downloaded, which is great. And I can actually take this and it's in my downloads folder. And I can click and drag it right into my Google Drive, and it will just stay in there in Google Drive and will open in Sheets. I'm actually going to not do that at the moment because I did it ahead of time. And it does take up to about a minute because it is such a large sheet. So once I've done that, it would actually just show up in my Google Drive. Again, I just have it open in another tab just to save some time for this PD. And this is a really cool thing. So actually, this is every dog that's registered in New York is on this sheet. So if you have a dog that you've registered, you might find that dog here. And I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom. Fun fact, that actually doesn't even seem like all the dogs. This is telling me, oh, there it is. There are 345,728 dogs registered in New York City. And you can see some of the data here. It's actually telling you the name of the dog, the gender of the dog, the birth year, type of dog, the borough and zip code where it is registered, and just some other information. So the reason why I went to New York City Open Data is because this is so much data that it would be impossible for me to look at all this data and make any sense of it without using some tools in Google Sheets. What we're going to do is we're going to create a chart that will take some of this data and make sense of it easy for us without us having to comb through 350,000 names of dogs. So what I'm going to do is over on the corner here, I'm going to start mapping out some data. Let's take a look at, I'm going to make a chart that breaks down the difference, how many female dogs compared to male dogs are in the city. So I'm going to do gender. I'm going to say how many are male, how many are female, and number. So if I want to count how many male dogs are in the city, what I would have to do, one thing I could do is I could go down column C here and count how many times it says M. And you can imagine in 350,000 cells, that'll take me quite some time. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some formulas that are in Google Sheets that will allow me to do this much, much easier. Now, if you're ever looking for a formula you want to use in Google Sheets, there's a few things you can do. There's a little functions button up here, things like the sum, so count how many people or how many dogs are here in the city, the average, so maybe I can make the average age of the dogs, count, max, min, a whole bunch of different ones. You don't need to memorize these. There are tons and tons and tons and tons of formulas, as you can see as I scroll through this. But the one I want to do is I want to count how many times the letter M shows up in column C. And this is one formula that I actually have memorized. But if you don't have it memorized, you can always Google it. You can always look at the formulas there. So the one I'm going to use, I'm going to type the equal sign, and then I'm going to type count if. And this is, again, just one that I've memorized. And so what I want to do is I want to count, give me a little bit of information here on what I need to do. So count if, what's the range, and what are we looking for? So the range I want to look in is this column C. And again, so I'm looking at how many dogs are male. So I'm going to do comma. And what I'm looking for is the amount of times an M appears in column C. So count if the column C, how many times we see the letter M. I'm going to click enter. A lot of data here, so it's taking some time. There are 189,000 male dogs in New York City. So let's do the same thing. Let's do this for the female dogs. So if I click equals, that formula again was count if. There we go. Sorry, my Wi-Fi was just catching up. And I want to see column C. This time what I'm looking for is the amount of times the letter F appears in column C. And look at that, 156,000 female dogs in New York. So this is really cool. You know, again, I'm using Google Sheets to do my math, to do my sorting for me, which is really nice thing to be able to learn how to do. Is the computer's starting to work for me. But just having this data isn't enough for me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all of this data. So I did that just by clicking and dragging. And I'm going to create a graph. So I'm going to, yes, okay, so I highlighted this data, and up on the top here, we see a lot of different options. I'm going to insert a chart. This is going to take a while because, again, this is such a big file. And look at this. Oh, it actually did this all for me. I thought I was going to have to make a pie chart, do all these different things. This Google Sheets automatically knew I probably wanted a pie chart. Take the percentages of male dogs versus female dogs, which is really cool. Fun stat there. Apparently, there are more male dogs than female dogs by a significant percentage in the city. But I can change a bunch of stuff. This is what Google Sheets has made for me automatically. But if I customize this, I can actually change the style of the chart, colors, different things, the font. It is a pie chart, but I can change it to a bar chart using some of these different things. The name of my chart right now is just number. That's not great. I'm going to change it to dogs in NYC by gender. Much better. And just did it in real time there. And this chart actually, what it's doing is it's pulling from this data every second. So if I go in and change some of this data, it would actually change in this chart in real time too. And I can do some cool things like I can take this chart and I can copy and paste it into a Google document or a Google slideshow, which is a really great tool. So again, that's just one of these tools that is available in Google Sheets, making charts and taking a lot of information and making use of it. Another cool tool that came up in the last PD that I was doing, this got asked in a question. I just want to address it because I think a lot of people had the same question, is as I scroll down on this data, it's kind of getting hard. You know, what do these M's mean? What is Bulldog English? What is all this stuff? What I want to highlight here is this top row is really important. So what I'm going to do is I want this top row to stay in place as I scroll down. So just a cool tool, again, that was asked the last time I did this. And I want to make sure everyone has it. So I want this row to stay put. So I'm going to go to View, Freeze, and just one row. And now you can see when I scroll down, that row sticks at the top, and that's really, really nice. So I'm just going to look at that again. So if I go to View, Freeze, and I just did 1 row. I can do 2 rows, 0 rows. I'm gonna go back to no rows, just so this is set up for the next time. That's really great. Some other tools here. You can see that some of these things, that depending on the name of the dog, or if it's a mixed breed of dog, it starts moving into the next cell here. And I think I find that a little confusing. So I can actually make this cell a little bit bigger just by going up to the top of the sheet and waiting till my pointer just changes to this little arrow thing. And you can see I can make this bigger, make this smaller. I can even, if I want to add something in here, I can right click and insert a column on the right. Ooh, too many things. Sorry, this is a really big sheet. But I can adjust this document in a lot of different ways. One thing I want to say too, if you are interested in using New York City Open Data, it is a really big document, so just be mindful of what devices your students might be accessing this on. But there are a lot of things you can do. For instance, you can take all the dogs in New York City and only look at the dogs in the Bronx, or only look at the dogs in Brooklyn, just to make it a little bit smaller and easier to manage. But again, the purpose of this is not for you to have to use New York City data. If you want to use it, you can, but the purpose is for you to be able to create your own sheet and make some charts and tables out of it. I'm gonna go back into my slideshow now. And you are gonna have an activity, an action for you all to do in just a moment. Okay, so you saw how I did this in New York City Open Data. I found the information that I wanted. I exported it as a CSV, and then I clicked and dragged from my downloads folder into my Google Drive. And then I just used a formula I remembered. I just had memorized, count if. There's plenty of formulas out there. You can Google them if you have a question about what you were trying to do. And then I created a chart using that formula and then inserting a chart. Okay, so what I want everyone to do right now is you're gonna take 5, maybe up to 10 minutes to go to sheets.google.com or go to drive.google.com and create your own Google Sheet. You might just put in some data that you wanna put in. Maybe it's a lesson you have coming up for your students. Or if you want, you can use NYC Open Data. I'll put the link in the chat in just a moment. And what I'll ask you to do after that is I'll ask you to share that document with me. So again, you're gonna take 5 minutes now to create a Google Sheet or to import a Google Sheet. And I'm gonna put the New York City Open Data link in the chat. Again, don't need to use it, but it is an option. And in 5 minutes, I'm going to ask everyone to look at my screen again, and I will show you how to share that document, or I should say share that sheet with me. But if you already know how to do it, you can do it. Okay, again, 5 minutes, go ahead, create a Google Sheet, add some data to it, make a chart, make a table out of it. If you have any questions, put it in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself. Just keep this slide up in case anyone does want to look at how I made that table again, that chart, I should say. Data from the New York City site takes quite some time to download. That's why it's nice to download it yourself and share that document with students if that is something you want to do. If anyone has some questions, feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat. I can give you another 4 minutes to create your Google Sheet before we talk about how to share it. Let's cycle through some slides here. Thank you. Just another minute, folks. I know some people are probably creating their Google Sheets right now and experimenting with the tables and formulas. Thirty more seconds, everybody, before I ask you to look at my screen again. Okay, everybody, if you could please look at my screen again. I know you might be in the middle of your sheet and creating process, but please move away from that tab and move back into my tab where you're looking at my slideshow, because we're going to cover one last thing before we break for questions, or maybe some folks leave for an early weekend. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you to share this doc with me. But what I'm going to do first is I want to show you how to share these docs and how to make sure that you're sharing them the right way. So if I take a look at my New York City dog Google Sheet, I have an option here in the top right-hand corner to share this green button here. Very similar in Google Docs and Google Slides if you've ever used those. And I'm going to click share. And Google's actually given me a menu, which looks brand new. It seems like they've changed the way this looks very recently. And I have a few options here. I can share it with someone I often email with. I'm on a different email account, so I'll share it with Tom Bajesi here, which is actually myself somewhere else. Oh, I own it already. That makes sense. So what I just did was I tried to share this sheet with me, but I'm actually already the owner of it. But I can, it's already shared with a bunch of people I work with at Mouse, and these people have editing rights, but let's say maybe Alex here has been abusing his editing privileges. I can click this down arrow here and change it so he can only view this sheet instead. I can even give temporary access. So maybe I only want him to share it for, to look at it for a certain period of time before I lock this off from him. Another thing I can do is probably one of my favorite ways to share it, especially if you're using Google Classroom, is to, it has this link that comes along with it. So right now, anyone in my organization, anyone at mouse.org can find and edit this document. I'm just gonna click got it. But I'd like to change that. I'd like it so anyone in the world can view it. Again, I don't want them to be able to edit it, too many people going in at once. What I want is this document to be public. And what I mean by public is anyone in the world can edit it at the moment, but I don't want that. So I'm gonna change this little drop-down menu here. I'm gonna make anyone in the world someone who can view it. Great. So that is, my access has expired. I'm gonna reload this document. It expired because I changed the settings on it. And Google is just catching up. Quite a big document, so just giving it a second to load. But what I can do now, if I click this share button, I currently only have view access. If I copy the link now, the link's been copied, and I put it in the chat. So I've just pasted this big sheet into the chat. If anyone wants to click on it right now, I want to just show what it's like when other people are looking at the same sheet. So if somebody wants to click in the URL I just put in the chat, look at this. Some other people are now jumping in and taking a look at the sheet at the same time I am. And anyone who's in there right now will actually even see where my cursor is at the moment. I can see a lot of people. Ivan's up in the top left-hand corner here. I'm over here. And so folks, if you do want this sheet, I only gave you view access, so you can't do a whole lot with it, but you can actually, if you want, you can go to File, and you can make a copy of it. So that way, so if you're given a document that you can only view or sheet that you can only view, you can always just make a copy of it, and then when in your copy, you can change and do whatever you want with it. Okay, I hope that makes sense to everybody. I'm just gonna make sure I covered everything in my slideshow. I was gonna have you share it with me, but don't worry, actually, we're running low on time. If you don't have any extra questions, go have a nice weekend. Get you out 5 minutes early there. Again, a company I work at is called Mouse. We do a whole lot of PDs on G Suite, some of our own STEM content. The next PD we have coming up, I'll be doing it myself. It is Coding with CS First. It's a Google product. It's gonna be Monday at 10 a.m. It will be on the remote learning calendar once the DOE puts it there. But if you'd like, the URL is also there. So if you want to join that one, feel free to catch me at 10 a.m. on Monday. I'll put it in the chat as well. So yeah, if you want to bring coding to your Google Classroom, feel free to join me at 10 a.m. David, looks like the mouse domain has a new share option, DOE login, or my school. Do not have the new look share yet. Oh yeah, so a question in the chat is, when I went to the share button, there was a menu that I had said looks very new and modern. Google's currently testing that out actually, so some people have it, some people don't. Sometimes I have it, sometimes I don't have it. I would guess that probably in about a month's time it will be standard for everyone. Let's see, someone had an issue signing in, so I'm just going to put the sign in link in there again. And folks, we do provide CTLE credit for this, but we send it out at the end of the month. So it being the first, it will be quite some time before you see it, unfortunately. So you'll get your CTLE credit certification on June 1st, so a month from today, if you filled out the sign-in sheet. If there are no questions, I'm just going to end this this call.